Now today I am beginning with part 2 of Indian Partnership Act 1932. Okay, so my previous video, if you all will have a look at it, talks about the part 1 of Indian Partnership Act and part 2. So this simplifies the way you will study the chapter. Okay, now part 2 is again very simple. There is nothing which is like very difficult to understand or to remember. First, the most important topic here, we will discuss about the relationship of partners. Okay, now partners have relationship amongst themselves. We were talking that partners are agents as well as principals. So they have a relationship amongst themselves. Okay, so if there are 4 partners, they have certain rights and duties to perform. So the relationship amongst themselves gives the rights and duties towards the firm, towards other partners, okay, and the rights available to each and every partner. And they have a relationship with the outsiders as well, which thus provides what are their authority and what are their liability to the outside world. Okay. Now in authority, we will discuss certain authorities which are expressed in nature specifically, okay, written down in the agreement. Okay, it is agreed between all the partners together, and there are certain implied authority which law by itself presumes that, okay, if nothing even is mentioned in the agreement, these are certain authorities which a partner but obvious has it, only then the business can be done. Okay, so like example, they can buy, sell goods, make payments, file suit. We will come to it in detail. Okay, this is just for your, it's an outline of what are we going to study today. Second, reconstitution of a firm. I think I had also spoken about this, but let me just come back to it again. Reconstitution, again, change in the constitution of the firm. It can come about due to admission of a new partner, retirement of an old partner, removal or expansion of another partner, insolvency of any partner, and death. Okay, so there is a reconstitution of the firm. The certain terms and terminologies and agreements will change. Terms and conditions of the partnership agreement may change. Due to admission, there will be division of profits more. Okay, so the portion received by the partners will be less. Retirement, expulsion, insolvency. If there is insolvency, then what has to be done? Insolvency of one partner, insolvency of all partners. All that changes the constitution of the firm, and death. Then we have certain rights of an outgoing partner, the partner which is either retiring, okay, or he's been expelled from the business. So we have rights of an outgoing partner. Next is dissolution. Dissolution is again a topic in itself. Dissolution is of 2 things. You can dissolve partnership or we dissolve the firm. Okay. When it is said that the dissolution is taking of partnership or when the dissolution is taking of the firm itself. Okay. Then we have modes of dissolution and consequences of dissolution. Okay. So dissolution is a topic in itself. Okay. Next, we have registration of the firm and effects of non-registration of firm. Here I will just like to tell you that registration of a partnership firm is not compulsory. It is optional. Okay, it's optional. Now because of which there are many partnership firms who do not register themselves. Okay, like I have my father who carries on partnership business with his brothers. They have an oral agreement. They have orally started a business. There is nothing done. They have just made one small agreement in writing also, and they are doing the business. There is no registration. But what will be the effects of such non-registration? That is given under this act. Okay. So let's begin today. Okay. Relationship of partners with one another thus gives the rights of the partners and their duties. Okay. Rights of the partners. So our topic number 1 is the relationship of partners to one another. Okay, now this relationship, the rights, which come up, it is generally through an agreement only. Whatever they have written down in the agreement will be the rights of the partners with each other. Also, there are certain things which may not be written in the agreement. Okay, so they again fall under the implied authority. But if you want to make some specific detailing, that the partner should get remuneration or partner should get interest on capital, this has to be mutually agreed and it has to be written down in the agreement to be provided. Okay, it can just not happen randomly based, without any agreement existing. So here, through an agreement between the parties, and such agreement normally provides for all the mutual rights and obligations. Obligations is nothing but duties. Where, however, partnership arises by any implication, okay, or wherever the articles of the partnership are silent or where they do not exist itself, then the rights and duties of the partners are governed by the Act. So if there are certain terms or certain rights which you have not mentioned in your partnership agreement, then it will be those rights, it will be those duties which will be given under the Act. Okay. Now we will see which are those type of rights which require specific written down, mutual rights which are to be written down in the agreement. Okay. Now see this. Unless otherwise agreed by the partners differently, the following rules will apply. This is given under the Act. Okay. Now what are those rules? First, one very simple thing. Every partner has a right to take part in the business. Okay, conduct and manage the business. Okay, this is given under the Act itself. Second, every partner, whether he is an active partner, whether he is a dormant partner, he can inspect the books of accounts. Okay, so even you all can write it down along with me. Inspect books of accounts. First one was manage the business. Manage the business. Okay. So you will not have to mug it up. Third, every partner is entitled in the profits equally. If you have mentioned it differently in your agreement, you are saying that okay, I and A and B, we will share it in the ratio 3:2. तो ठीक है, तुम्हारे agreement में तुमने लिखा है तो okay. But what if you have not written it? Then you will share the profits equally if nothing is mentioned. Next, say suppose a partner has contributed more than the share of capital for the purpose of business. In simple words, if he has given a loan to the firm, a partner has provided loan to the firm, then he is entitled to get interest on such loan on whatever rate they have agreed upon. But say suppose they have not agreed upon a rate, then what rate of interest will you give? Then in that case, the rate of interest will be 6% per annum. Okay. But a partner cannot claim interest on capital unless there is an agreement to pay on it. Okay. There are 2 points under this point number 4. First, there is an interest on loan. What is loan? The excess amount over the capital. Okay. So capital of A was 1 lakh rupees, but he had provided 2 lakh. So this 1 lakh will be treated as capital only. But this remaining 1 lakh will be treated as a loan. He is entitled to get interest on this extra amount. Okay, with an interest rate which we decide between the partners. But say if it is not decided, then what interest will you pay? You will pay 6% per annum. However, there is no interest on capital unless and until you have made an agreement to pay for it. Okay. Next, a partner is entitled to be indemnified by the firm if he is doing any out-of-pocket expenses. So, if he is doing any expenses which are actually the expenses of the firm, but he is doing from his pocket, he has incurred those expenses for the course of the business, then he is entitled to be indemnified by the firm. Okay. For all the payments which is made by him in respect of partnership debts, or any partnership liability, and disbursements made in an emergency for protecting the firm from the loss. So if he has done any kind of such payments, he has a right to take it from the firm. Next, every partner is, as a rule, he is the joint owner of the partnership property. Okay, unless and until they have exclusively put up in the agreement something differently. Okay, so any kind of a partnership property which is exclusively put for the purpose of partnership only, then all the partners are joint owners of that property, unless otherwise decided and put in the agreement differently. Okay. Next, a partner has a power to act in emergency for protecting the firm for loss. Okay, so this is also given by law. Okay, that he has the full right to protect the firm. Every partner is entitled to prevent the introduction of a new partner into the firm without his consent. So if you require a new partner, admission of a new partner cannot happen without the consent of the other partners. Point number 9, each partner has a right to retire by giving a notice where the partnership is at will, because partnership is at a will is something where there is no date mentioned for dissolution, right? So if another partner is, like, he wants to retire, then he has to give a notice. So all the other partners has a right, all the partners have a right to retire by giving a notice. Okay. Every partner has a right to continue in the partnership and not to be expelled from it. 11. An incoming partner will not be liable for any debts or liabilities of the firm before he became a partner. This is very obvious. Okay. Now a new partner has added. Initially there was A and B only, and C has now been added. Okay, admitted to the firm. He will be liable for those debts and liabilities after he became the partner, but not before. Okay. Next, every outgoing partner has a right to carry on a competitive business under certain conditions. Okay. So there cannot be complete restriction on an outgoing partner for not carrying on the business at all. Okay. So he has full right to carry on the business. There can be certain allowable conditions put on that outgoing partner. So far clear? All the rights? Okay. I am moving to the duties of the partners. Okay. Now what are the duties? Again, apart from any duties imposed by the partnership articles, means specifically written by the partners under their deed. Okay. Partnership article, like how you have articles of association for company, we have partnership deed over here. So it has all these points. Okay. It is the articles known as a partnership article, which gives the rights and duties of the partners. So apart from those duties, law has input them with this implied duties. Okay. The following statutory duties are implied. Let's see. Every partner is bound to carry on the business of the firm to the greatest common advantage. Okay. Every partner must be just and faithful to the other partners. Next, a partner is bound to keep and render true, proper and correct accounts of the partnership. Fourth, there has to be utmost good faith between the partners. Okay, and one partner must not take advantage of any other partner. Okay, you have to communicate full information to each other basically. Fifth, every partner must account for any benefits derived from the partnership business without the consent of the other partners. That means they are saying the partners must not make any kind of secret profit. If they have to give an account for it. Okay, give the details of it. Then a partner must not compete with the firm without the consent of the other partners. Okay, any profits made by such unauthorized competition can be claimed by the firm itself. Right. Every partner is bound to attend diligently the business of the firm, and in absence of any agreement, he is not entitled to receive any remuneration. If you want the partners to receive remuneration like salary, Okay, remuneration is nothing but salary. So you want partners. Okay, they can be, there are 4-5 partners in the firm, but only 2 are like, very active, doing all day the whole work. So if you want to provide them remuneration, you have to put it in the agreement expressly, state it. Okay, and how much remuneration per month. If you have not put any such express statement, then there cannot be any remuneration for the partner. 8. In absence of any agreement, every partner is bound to share losses equally with the others. Like how you had profits as a right, loss is a duty. Every partner must use the partnership property exclusively for the firm. So if you have a car, okay, which you have made it as a partnership property, then that car should be used for the purpose of the partnership work. Okay, for wherever you want to go for the business, for conducting the business of the partnership, you're supposed to exclusively use it for that, unless until there is otherwise provided in your agreement. Every partner is bound to indemnify the firm for any loss caused by fraud in conduct of the business. So say if firm has incurred loss, okay, due to the fraudulent activity of any of the partner, then that partner has to pay back the firm. The firm has a right, okay, to recover that loss from the partner. Like how in the rights, the partner had a right to recover from the firm for any activities done by him out of his pocket, then the expenses done by him. Similarly, it is here. A partner who is guilty with willful neglect in the conduct of the business and the firm then suffers losses in consequence is bound to make a compensation to the firm and the other partners. Okay, willfully he neglected the business. No partner can assign or transfer his partnership interest to any other person. Okay, so if I am a partner in a firm, I cannot transfer my interest to, say, my daughter or someone else or my son. No, there is no transfer or assignment which can take place in partnership. Okay. 30. But a partner may assign the profits and share his partnership assets. Okay, means he is made a sub-partner. We had discussed it. A sub-partner is a partner which is there under another partner, and the profits taken by this actual partner is then shared by this sub-partner. But the assignee or transferee will have no right to ask for their accounts, or he will have no rights to interfere in the management of the business. He would be entitled only to share the actual profits. That's it. On dissolution, he will be entitled to share the assets and also the accounts, but only from the date of dissolution. That's it. Until then, he doesn't have any right. Okay, this kind of sub-partners, or you can say any assignees or transferees. Then we have point number 14. Every partner is bound, okay, it is his duty to act within the scope of his actual authority, not to cross his authority. If he crosses, he has to compensate the other partners for the loss unless they ratify his act. Okay. So whatever is given under the law, okay, the authority which he has to perform, authority also will be coming to it, he has to act within the scope of authority. If he goes beyond and he incurs losses, then he has to compensate the other partners also. Okay. So this was the rights and duties, relationship of the partners amongst themselves. Alright. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? Okay. Now I am moving to the next part, relationship of the partners with the third party. Here we will talk about the authority and the liability. Okay. Second topic. Now partner as an agent, there is a principal agent relationship and the partnership act contract. Okay. Every partner is an agent of the firm and of the other partners for the purpose of the business of the firm. In the case of partnership, each partner is also the principal and each one is agent for the other partners. So both they are principal as well as the agent. Thus, the general law of agency is incorporated into the law of partnership. This is all only read, okay? Just to make you all understand. Therefore, partnership be regarded as a law of agency also. The acts of every partner who does any act for carrying on in usual way of the business of kind carried on by the firm bind the firm and the partners. So any act one partner is doing for carrying on the business of the firm, it will bind the firm also and it will bind all the other partners, unless the partner so acting had no authority only to act for the firm. The person with whom he is dealing knows that he has no authority or does not know or believe him to be a partner. Okay, otherwise, except from these three conditions, if a partner does any act for the business, it will bind the firm and it will bind all the other partners also. Okay, now let's understand the capacity and the authority of the partner. Okay, authority means capacity of one partner, of that particular partner, to bind the firm by his acts. Okay, so what all acts will he conduct that will bind the firm? So the authority can be expressed or it can be implied by law. Expressed means it is given by words, whether it may be spoken, oral or written. The firm is bound by all the acts of the partners done within the scope of his expressed authorities, even if the acts are not within the scope of the partnership business. This means that since you have written it down or since you have expressly agreed, okay, the firm and the partners have expressly agreed about certain authorities, then even if they are not within the scope of the partnership business, but it was agreed and made as a a document, a deed, then those authorities will be bound by the firm also, by the other partners also. Okay, but implied authority of a partner is known as an ostensible or an apparent authority which has been taken under the law only. Okay, means like you are doing certain normal business, okay, the acts done in the usual way in the name of the firm. So like you selling the firm's goods, by purchasing the goods for the firm, these are all implied authority. You do not have to mention it. Okay, by accepting the payments of debts, by engaging and discharging employees. Okay, so these are the acts done in the normal course of business. Okay, also in a trading firm, whether it's buying and selling, a partner has the following additional powers. 1. To borrow money on the firm's credit and to pledge the firm's good. To accept, make and issue negotiable instruments like bill of exchange, check, etc. To employ a solicitor or attorney on behalf of the firm. Okay, so these are the implied authorities which are already given under the law, okay, to carry on the business of the firm. But there are certain acts which go beyond the implied authority. Express तो हमें समझ में आ गया, वो लिख के होना चाहिए, या तो it must be expressly agreed orally कि भाई you will have this particular authority. If you having that, then there is no problem. But there are certain implied authorities which are being given under the law. A partner is not supposed to go beyond these authorities. Okay, now say what are those? Example: to submit a dispute relating to the business of the firm to arbitration. He did not have the authority, so this is not something which is implied by act. Okay, you need to have an expressly written authority for dispute, submission of your dispute to the arbitration. Opening of a bank account on behalf of the firm in his own name. Okay. Third, compromise or relinquish any claim or portion of the claim by the firm. Withdraw a suit or proceedings filed on behalf of the firm. Admit any liability in the suit or proceedings. Acquire any immovable property. Transfer of any immovable property. And enter into partnership on behalf of the firm. So all these are acts beyond the implied authority, which simply means that you require an express authority for doing these kind of work. So generally, to manage a bank account, open a bank account, to sign the checks, they put it expressly that this particular partner, since he is always available in India or always available in this Mumbai office, he will be the one who will be having the authority for the entire bank account of the firm. So you need to have an express authority for all these 8 types of implied authority, acts beyond the implied authority. Okay, so authority, and we have finished authority. Now I am moving to the liability. Okay, obviously partners are liable to the outsiders. So now extent of partners' liability. It is open to the partners by means of an express contract to extend or limit the implied authority, but third parties will be bound by such limitations only if they have a notice of such curtailment. Okay, so whatever authority which you have either extended within the partners or you have limited, you have to inform that to the third parties. Okay, so even the third parties will be bound by such extension or by such limitation if they have the notice of the same. Otherwise, all the partners are liable jointly and severally for all the acts and omissions binding on the firm, including liabilities arising from the contract source as well as torts. Okay, torts is a civil wrong. Okay, civil wrong. So anything done, any tort also committed by the partner, then all the other partners are jointly and severally liable. Okay. This is known as the liability of the partners for the acts of the firm. Okay. The liability of the partners for the acts of the firm. But in order that an act done may be an act of the firm and therefore binding on the firm, it is necessary that the partner was doing the act on behalf of the firm. Simple. If the partner was not doing any act on behalf of the firm, it cannot bind the firm. Okay. In the name of and in behalf of the firm and not in the personal capacity. So, if a particular partner, Mr. A, is doing any act in his personal capacity, okay, he is not doing any act on behalf of the firm, then they cannot bind the firm. Simple as that. Okay. So this entire paragraph is just saying that all the acts done by the partners, okay, all the partners are jointly and severally liable, okay, and it thus binds the firm. But when can it bind the firm? If the partner is acting on behalf of the firm and not in personal capacity. Okay. Next, liability of the firm for the torts. Now here, every partner is liable for the negligence and the fraud of the other partners in course of the business. A partner charges the firm if he acts as an agent for it. Correct? The firm is similarly liable where a partner commits a tort with the authority of his co-partners. Okay, both firm and partners, they are equally liable to each other. Now say if a partner was acting within the scope of his authority, receives the property of the third person and then misapplies it, or if the firm in the course of its business receives the property of a third person while it is in the firm's custody, a partner misapplies it, in each case the firm is liable to make good the loss. Okay, so in short they are saying if there is any property, okay, misapplied by a partner, even if it was under the custody of the firm, so partner to hai liable, but it will also, the firm will have to, firm is liable to make good the loss for the third party. Okay, तो किसी थर्ड पार्टी का प्रॉपर्टी था आपके पास, उस पार्टनर ने मिसअप्लाई कर दिया, ओके, receives and misapplies it. Or if the firm, in the course of the business, the firm has received it and it was in the custody of the firm but a particular partner misapplied that particular property, the firm only will be liable to make good the loss. ठीक है. Next, liability of an incoming partner. Okay, I told you an incoming partner is not liable for any debts incurred before he joined the firm. Okay. However, if the incoming partner himself is ready to assume, okay, the liability for the debts by novation, that is by a tri-party agreement between the creditor of the firm, the partners existing at the time it was incurred and the incoming partner, then he will be liable. Okay, if they are making a fresh agreement in which now they are making this incoming partner also liable if he is ready to, then yes, he will be liable for the debt even incurred before he was admitted. Okay. Next is liability of an outgoing or a retiring partner. Okay. Now, what is an outgoing partner? Outgoing partner basically is the one who has retired or he's been expelled. Okay. Remains liable for the partnership debts which were contracted while he was a partner. He may be, however, discharged again from such, liabilities and debts if there is a novation, a new contract made between the firm, between himself and the creditors. He may also continue to be liable even after retirement if he allows himself to be held out as a partner. That means he is keeping his name in the firm still. Okay, though he has retired on papers, he is not doing any work for the firm, but he is given his name, still he is there. Then he will be still liable for the acts of the firm after his retirement. Okay. In order to protect himself from any liability, he has to give an express notice of his retirement to the persons who are dealing with the firm before his retirement or give a public notice in that manner. Simple. Public notice de do, official gazette mein aa jayega that you have retired. Death and insolvency. Okay. Death and or insolvency. So, how does the liability of such partner be there? In a state of a partner who dies or becomes insolvent is not liable for the partnership debts. He's become insolvent now. Okay. For contracted after the date of death or insolvency. However, they will be liable for the debts incurred before their death and insolvency. Simple. So, after their death and after they are declared insolvent and then any other debts are coming up or any other liabilities coming up with the firm, then they are not liable because they are dead, either dead or already declared insolvent. Okay, but before any such thing, however, they will be liable for the debts incurred before they died or before they were adjudicated insolvent. Okay. So with this I finish the authority and the liability also. Okay. Now coming to the dissolution of the firm. Okay. Now what is dissolution of firm? Say A and B are partners. Okay. Now B died. Automatically the firm will be getting dissolved because it requires 2 or more persons to carry on the business. But say suppose A, B and C, okay, they are partners and C dies. So partnership is dissolving but not the firm. Partnership between A, B and C will dissolve. There will be a reconstitution in the firm. A and B can still carry on the partnership firm. Correct? By again making a new agreement, etc., changing their profit sharing ratio, whatever. Okay. So section 39, the dissolution of partnership between all the partners of the firm is called the dissolution of the firm. All the partners are dissolving. Then it will be dissolution of the firm. A dissolution does not necessarily follow because the partnership has ceased to do the business. For the partnership may continue for the purpose of realizing its assets. obviously even after whatever you have filed for dissolution, you have to realize this asset. No, you have to sell the assets, pay off the remaining liability, and whatever is the remaining left, any surplus left with the firm, then it is divided between the partners. Okay. Now, Partnership Act makes a complete distinction between the dissolution of partnership and dissolution of the firm. Where there is dissolution of partnership between all the partners, then only it is known as a dissolution of the firm. But where there is an extinction of relationship between some partners only, then it is only a dissolution of partnership. Okay, so dissolution of partnership may or may not include the dissolution of the firm, but dissolution of the firm necessarily means dissolution of the partnership as well. Okay, now dissolution of the firm takes place when there is an expiry of the fixed term for why the partnership was formed, the completion of the adventure where the partnership was a particular partnership, by death of a partner, insolvency of a partner, by the retirement of a partner, where there are only two partners. Okay, and this is happening. Okay. Now, however, in the above cases, remaining partners may also continue with the firm in pursuance of an agreement to that effect, make a new agreement. If they do not continue, then the dissolution takes place automatically. Okay. Now, what are the modes, okay, of dissolution? Okay, reasons of dissolution also. First, a mutual agreement. All the partners, they have decided, agreed to dissolve it mutually. Okay. By insolvency of all the partners but one. Okay. A, B and C are partners. Both A and B are now insolvent. एक ही रह गया. So obviously it will become a dissolution, no, of the firm. Third, business itself became illegal. And fourth, where the partnership is at will again, a notice of dissolution is again given by the partner that there is a intention of dissolving the firm, and the other partners consent to it, and the firm is dissolved. Okay. Dissolution of the firm through court. Okay, so if you see the modes of dissolution, there is one by mutual consent. Okay. And one I can say by compulsory dissolution by the court. Okay. As per section 44, the court may order dissolution of the firm in the following circumstances. One, where a partner has become an unsound mind. Okay, now partnership is a contract. Partner has to be competent to enter into a contract. So if he is an unsound mind, then he can automatically, the firm will have to get dissolved. He is a lunatic. Okay, so in that case, the partnership cannot be continued. Permanent incapacity of a partner to carry on that particular business, say if he becomes blind or he's got paralysis, any kind of a medical incapacity. Okay. Third, misconduct of a partner which is affecting the business prejudicially, constantly. Okay, gambling, conviction, of some other kind of a fraud, any other grounds, it will be sufficient for the court to order dissolution. Fourth, persistent disregard of partnership agreement by a partner. Whatever is written in the agreement, that particular partner commits the breach of that agreement on constant basis, then the court may order dissolution. Transfer of interest or share by a partner. It's as it is not allowed under this act. You cannot transfer your interest or assign to someone else. Okay, so if he has done that, where a partner has transferred whole of his interest, okay, to a third person, then the court may order dissolution. Business is constantly working at a loss, and there is any other just and equitable grounds where the court feels justified that it is good that we dissolve the firm. Okay. Now, effects of dissolution in that case. Continuing authority of the partners. What does this mean? Now, since the court has ordered dissolution, immediately though you cannot close the business, so there must be some ongoing transactions which are yet taking place. So here the authority of the partners to bind the firm continues as long it is necessary to wind up the business. Okay, तो डिसोल्यूशन भले ऑर्डर कर दिया कोर्ट ने, बट वाइंडिंग अप प्रोसेस तो तुम्हें करना पड़ेगा ना. वाइंडिंग अप प्रोसेस क्या है? यू हैव टू सेल अप ऑल योर एसेट्स. Okay, there are certain liabilities you have to pay your employees, creditors. So वो सब तो you will still do ना. Okay, so you have to finish all this work. So in that case, to finish this work, the continuing authority of partner is still there. Okay, provided that the firm is in no case bound by the acts of the partners who has been adjudged insolvent except on the principle of holding out. Okay. Also, each partner has an equitable lien over the firm's asset, entitling him to have been applied in a payment of the firm's debt. Obviously, if a particular partner has paid the debt of the firm completely, then he has a right to take the firm assets. Okay, and in payment of whatever is due to the partner, this lien can be enforced by injunction forbidding unfair distribution. Okay, this all. You just have to understand that if a particular partner is paying the whole of the debts of the firm, then he has a right of lien on the partnership property. He can take over that property. Then continuing liability of the partners until and unless the entire winding up is finished. Partners continue to be liable to the outsiders for the acts which they have done, unless they have given a public notice is given of such dissolution. For all the acts done before the dissolution, they are liable. Okay. After dissolution, the rights and obligations of the partners continue in all things necessary for winding up of the business, for finishing the unfinished transactions. Okay. Then there is something known as a right of a premium. Premium is nothing but goodwill. Okay. Now see, I'll give you an example. X and Y, they were carrying on a business of partnership firm. Now they wanted another partner, so they admitted Z. Now they told Z, you have to bring two things. One, capital, and also bring goodwill. The firm has a lot of goodwill, okay. So we are going to value the goodwill. You will bring your share of goodwill also in the firm. Okay, so they will value it. And say, suppose he got a goodwill of 10,000 and he got capital of 20,000. Okay, now why will an incoming partner get goodwill? Because obviously, before he became a partner, X and Y has already created a name, a brand, okay, in the market. So if he also wants his name to be there in the firm as a partner, he's paying for that particular name in the market. Okay, so he gets his goodwill. Now Mr. Z, he paid the goodwill of 10,000, thinking that yes, I am going to be a partner for a long time, and this partnership is at a will. Okay, it's not a particular partnership, it's at will, so it's going to be carried on for long years, number of years to come. But say he just joined, okay, and something happened and the firm had to be dissolved, and he had no fault. Okay. The fault was committed by some other partners or fraud was committed and the firm had to be dissolved. So he has a right to ask return of the premium he paid. Okay. Let's see. We will read this. Okay. To buy entry into an existing firm, a new partner sometimes has to pay a premium to the existing partners in addition to the capital. On dissolution, he is entitled to demand this return of the premium if the partnership was for a fixed term and then was dissolved before the expiry of that term. Okay, यानी already fixed term था, यानी अभी भी बोल रहे थे कि नहीं, we are going to continue for another, like say 20 years. Okay, and before that only, like in 5 years only, it got dissolved within 5 years. He just joined and 5 years had just taken place and they were dissolving. So he has a right to take the premium. Unless the dissolution which took place, okay, the dissolution before the term took place was caused by a mutual agreement. He agreed, he had no problem. Or misconduct of the party, means misconduct of Z himself. Okay. Or death of a particular partner. So if there are these three reasons, then return of premium cannot be asked. because he mutually agreed, there was an agreement. He himself had a misconduct, okay, in the partnership business, and there was a death of the partner. Okay, so in that case, nothing can be asked as a return by a newly admitted partner. So far clear? Now settlement of the accounts on the dissolution, this is nothing but you can just read this. You have to settle all the accounts, pay off the losses and etc. Now loss due to insolvency of the partner. A partner who becomes insolvent, okay, then he is not able to contribute to any deficiency of the firm. So then who will contribute? The ones who are solvent partners. Okay. So in case of a partner is insolvent and he is not liable, then he is not able to contribute towards the deficiency, then you have to follow the principle which was laid down in the Gardner versus Murray. Now what was that? Here solvent partners will contribute only their share of deficiency in cash. Okay. The available assets should be distributed amongst the solvent partners in the proportion to their capital. Thus, the deficiency of the capital of insolvent partners will be distributed amongst the solvent partners in the respective capitals. Okay, simple. So, if there is any deficiency, okay, deficiency is existing, means there is more payment of liabilities and assets are less. Okay, liabilities are greater than the assets. Obviously, we will come on a, we'll have deficiency. So, in case of deficiency, insolvent partner will not pay anything. Only solvent partners will pay. Okay, and solvent partners, okay, will also share the deficiency of insolvent partner in their respective capital ratio. Okay. Then you have goodwills. You can have a sale of goodwill also. The firm can sell the goodwill in the market. Now coming to the last part, which is registration of the firm. I told you registration is not compulsory, but then there are certain consequences of non-registration. Okay, now what do you require for the registration of the firm? Simple. You need the name, the place or the principal office of the business of the firm, name of any other place where the firm may carry on business, the date when each partner joined, their name, PAN number, etc., the duration of the firm. Okay, then the statement shall be signed and verified by all the other partners and their agents specially authorized. And here it is stated that the Partnership Act does not make registration of a firm compulsory, but it introduces certain disabilities which makes registration necessary at one time or the other. An unregistered firm is not a illegal association. Okay, there is a important statement given here. Only because a partnership firm is not registered, that does not mean it is an illegal firm. It's very much legal because it is under the Act only that registration is not compulsory. Okay. Now what happens when you are a non-registered firm now? So here, if you are not registered, basically the court will not help. When will the court not help? Say suppose a partner wants to sue another partner. Court will not help. Okay. Say a partner wants to sue a creditor. Again, nothing. Court will not do anything for you. You are not registered. But say a creditor wants to sue a particular partner of a non-registered firm, court will very much help him. So basically, there will be no help received from the court when the firm actually needs it. Okay, so there are these consequences which they say. Okay, first, Section 69, okay, effects of non-registration. It places a bar on the right of the partner of the firm to sue each other or the firm. They cannot sue each other also, they cannot sue the firm also if they are non-registered. Okay, and the person suing is or has not been shown in the registrar of the firm as a partner. क्योंकि register नहीं किया तो registrar में आया नहीं है तो तुम कैसे sue करोगे? Also, Section 69 subsection 2 places a bar on institution of a suit by behalf of the firm against any third party. So the firm or the partners cannot sue the third party also. Okay. However, there is no bar on the third party to sue the firm or the partner. But even if it is a non-registered firm, the court will help in the following cases. 1. If there is a suit for dissolution, yes. 2nd, a suit for rendering accounts of a dissolved firm, court will help, even if you are not registered. 3rd, a suit for realization of the property of a dissolved firm. 4th, a suit for set-off claim, okay, the value of which does not exceed 100 rupees, which is not possible, okay. You can just say suit for claim or set-off. Everything now exceeds 100 rupees. A proceeding in execution or other proceedings incidental, okay. Any suit of the firm which has no place of business in the territories to which Indian Partnership Act extends. A suit for the realization of the property of an insolvent partner. A suit by the firm whose place of business are situated in those areas which are exempted from this particular chapter of the Indian Partnership Act. Okay, so in these cases, the court will still help even if you are a non-registered firm. Okay, so just as a revision, 69 bars the very institution of a suit by an unregistered firm or by its partners. Registration is a condition which is precedent to the right to institute the suit, and therefore condition precedent must be first fulfilled before you take the suit to the court. Okay, if therefore the date of the institution of the suit the firm is not registered, the subsequent registration cannot validate the suit. Okay, suit, it was already, there was a suit, okay, and now subsequent registration you are trying to do. No, it cannot be validated by that case. The only option left to the court is to dismiss the suit. By virtue of this provision, a partner of an unregistered firm cannot institute a suit to compel the other partners or partners to join the registration of the firm. Only remedy available by such partner is to institute a suit of dissolution, in that the court will help you. Okay. Now, however, an unregistered firm can bring a suit to enforce the right arising otherwise than out of the contract. Example, there is some injunction against a person for wrongful infringement of the trademark, etc. So this can be still taken up to the court. Okay, so registration and effects of non-registration is a very, very important topic for this chapter. Okay. Now I will just take you all through the few exam questions. Okay, just give me a minute. Okay, now these are the few exam questions which are I've taken up for this particular chapter, Indian Partnership Act. Okay, you can refer this. I'll be sending this across to you all. Whether minor can be admitted to the partnership firm, okay, and whether minor will have any right in the firm, you have to just explain. So it is just that yes, minor can be admitted. You can give this name of the decision, Mohiri BB versus Dharma Rao Das. It is very much been there in your module. Okay, where a partnership firm with the consent of all the other partners can admit a minor for the benefit of the partnership, and what are his rights. Okay, I have merged negotiable instruments and Indian Partnership Act questions together because tomorrow I will be doing negotiable instruments. Okay, question number 4, I told you all, holding out, partner by holding out, a partner by estoppel. That doctrine is very important. Doctrine means the rule. Okay, so what is a partner by holding out and what are its exceptions? Next question is distinguish between co-ownership and partnership. Okay, so these are from the past year exams, only these many questions have been asked from this chapter. Okay, so you can understand how much is the weightage of this chapter. Okay, like not more than 7 to 10 marks. Okay, so the way I have done this chapter with you all, if you all will finish it in that manner, only then you will be able to save time. Okay, and it will happen quickly. Otherwise it won't. So I have given you all the importance. You can read that once and finish studying this chapter ASAP. All right. Thank you so much.